Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on in the program, a one-on-one with Linda Gorman about the explosion in Medicaid costs here in Colorado. Oh my, who would have predicted 9 times what the state predicted? But first, you know him, you love him, you don't have to vote for him, but he would like a donation. Ken Buck, former state candidate for the United States Senate and Weld County prosecutor, DA. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
How's the prosecution business going?
It's plenty busy.
You missed the campaign?
I do. I actually love campaigning. I love being out around folks.
That was one of the ugliest, meanest, nasty personal campaigns I've seen in a long time.
You know,
good really good mud throwing.
The great thing about running is that you don't have time to watch commercials. So what you had to suffer through, I didn't have to suffer through.
Well, I mean, there was one winner, and that was the TV and radio stations. They won. You still haven't got quite the bug out of your system. You're still concerned about some federal issues, and you've started a brand new organization, which is why I wanted to talk to you. One of the things you ran on was a need to rein in the debt, rein in this remarkable debt problem we have. Here in Colorado, like many states, we have a balanced budget amendment. We can't spend more than we bring in taxes. It's just like any other enterprise or family. You made it a platform. You wanted to see that on a federal level. Talk to me about it.
I did. I think we need to have a federal balanced budget amendment, and I am a co-national chair with Ken Blackwell from Ohio of a group called Pass the Balanced Budget Amendment. I think that the system is broken in the sense that everyone goes to Washington, D.C. to bring home booty for their district, whether it's the state or congressional district. And until we have a strong mechanism in place that requires a balanced budget, we are going to have deficit spending. Small, large, it doesn't matter.
I don't think people quite grasp the size of the deficit and the debt, just how crippling this is. You know, we've never seen anything like this in peacetime. You know, we had something like this during the Civil War, and that's the closest we've gotten. What is it now? $45,000 per man, woman, and child right now, and that's just on the federal level. Here on the state level, you can add another $9,000 for state and local taxes. How big is this problem?
Well, you mentioned 45,000. You know, that's if you actually look at the fact that only half the people pay taxes in this country, it's significantly larger than 45,000. It is huge, and the problem is that there are various countries in the world that can help bail out Greece. There's no country in this world that's going to help bail out the United States when we default, and if we don't make drastic changes, I believe soon, we will default.
When you use, that's a strong word, hang on a second. We're watching what's going on in Greece right now, and it is collapsing. I don't think anything can save it except the other nations giving it cash and trying to prop it up. When you say when we default, is it a matter of when?
I think it is, and I think the unfortunate thing is we will hit a point, and nobody can really predict when that point is, where we won't be able to get back to the point where we can't default. And I don't know where that is, but I really think it is a matter of when we default. If we don't have a mechanism in place requiring responsibility in the federal government, they will continue to be irresponsible, and we will eventually default.
The Fed should have a balanced budget amendment just like the state of Colorado does. Is that the basic message?
Just like your family, my family, 49 states, all counties, all 64 counties in Colorado, yes.
All right, so passthebba.com is the organization. Now let's get to the fun stuff, which is, I don't see how you're going to make this happen. This is a huge Herculean task. We're talking about getting the United States government to pass an amendment that limits itself. It's like getting, you're a term limited politician. You've got one more term that you can run for up at Weld County because we have the right to petition. There's no such right when it comes to the federal government. How are you gonna make this happen?
Well, we were one vote away in 1995. The balanced budget amendment passed the House of Representatives and failed in the Senate because it only got 67 or 66 votes. It needed 67. Will it pass this year? I don't believe it will. There is a requirement this year that they have a vote in the House and in the Senate between October 1st and the end of the year. I don't think it'll pass, but I think the American people are upset enough that they are looking at this as somewhat of a litmus test, and I think that senators and congressmen across this country are going to be held accountable for their vote. Ultimately, I hope we get the momentum for it to pass, and maybe in the next 2 years, 4 years, especially if President Obama gets reelected and continues down the path that he is on right now, we may very well see a balanced budget amendment.
Do you really think the states are going to ratify a balanced budget amendment? 3/4 of the states, all the states now are living off of this pipeline of money coming from Washington, D.C. The stimulus package saved their butts when it came to their their state budgets. So you had the feds printing money, giving it to the states using that to poke the holes, cover the holes in their own budget. Is there enough states that would sign on to this?
I believe there are, and I think that's a great point. Frankly, between the feds helping the state pension plans, helping the states in a lot of different ways, the state government itself may not have an incentive. I think the people in the state do, and I think they can affect change through their elected representatives. I think there is a much greater chance that we could get 37 states to sign on than we could to get 67 senators to sign on, frankly.
But let me get wonky here, because there's a huge fight even inside conservative and libertarian feeling about should there be a balanced budget amendment. And we all like the concept, as we do here in Colorado, but we have a safety valve here in Colorado. The safety valve is the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. That is, if we want to spend more, we can spend as much as we want, but you have that final accountability. The state has to go to the people and ask permission. Mother, may I tax you more? The feds have no such mechanism. There's also no such mechanism for spending and revenue limitation in the federal government. If this passes, if there's a balanced budget, doesn't that just mean that these guys are going to vote us ever-increasing taxes? Because they have shown no restraint when it comes to the budget and spending, Republicans and Democrats. Remember when we had that Congress for a number of years. Once George Bush got into office, we spent like drunken Democrats too. I don't trust politicians, R or D. If this is there, isn't it a recipe just for inflated taxes?
Well, first, I appreciate you saying drunken Democrats and not insulting the Navy by using the term that most people do. I think that there are really two answers. One, there is a natural disinclination to tax and go back to your district and try to run for re-election. And so I think that in the political world, it's much easier to deficit spend and put the burden off on children or grandchildren than it is to actually tell people, look them in the eye and say, vote for me, I just raised your taxes. The second thing is, though, the 5-point plan that passed the BBA has adopted, and that is the plan that all 47 Republican senators have signed off on in the U.S. Senate, involves, one, the president submitting a balanced budget, two, Congress passing a balanced budget, three, that any tax increase would have to be receive a supermajority vote of 60%, which really doesn't mean much in the Senate. It means more in the House, because anything has to receive a 60-vote margin in the Senate, or you don't get cloture in the Senate. Then any deficit spending would have to be again receive that same supermajority, and finally that there would be an 18% cap. That the federal government spending would be capped at 18% of gross domestic product.
So let me kick that back to you. So
Sure.
what I'm hearing is a supermajority in order to raise taxes.
Yes.
Again, no big deal in the Senate, because you can't do anything unless you have 60 senators. But in the House, and because the House has to come back every other year, we're able to vote on them much more often. They're much more accountable. Why have it at 18%? It sounds a little Tabor-like, in that instead of growth of population plus inflation, you've got a plan that says we can spend up to 18% of everything. Is that the magic number? Why is that the magic number?
It's the magic number because if you look at the last 25 years of federal spending and average it out in relation to GDP, it turns out to be 18% of GDP over a 25-year period. We have fought wars, we have had recessions, and we have done fine averaging 18% of GDP.
Why not do it something more like what we do here in Colorado? Population plus inflation, something along those lines?
Yeah, I think the problem, even with using a term like GDP or with a formula like that, is when you put it in the Constitution, gross domestic product is defined differently 2 years later. Or, is it the population of citizens? Is it the population of citizens and what we estimate to be illegal immigrants? The population is an estimate. So I think there are a number of things that I think are problems when you actually put them in what you and I consider that sacred document, the U.S. Constitution.
There's been throughout American history a push for a limited constitutional convention, which is the states calling for that on a limited issue, not for the whole thing, but on one issue. And every time it gets close to happening, surprise, surprise, the Congress passes the amendment and sends it to the states. It seems to me that your job is going to be a whole lot easier if states and individuals get really uppity about this issue. And how do you plan on doing that? How does PassTheBBA.com do that?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that, and again, in 1995, the reason it went as far as it did was because there was a real effort to have that constitutional convention. I have a fear about a constitutional convention. I think there is a problem with giving a bunch of people from California, New York, and Massachusetts a limited mandate and watching what happens after that. But I do think that the pressure of a constitutional convention will help move this forward and hopefully have our members of Congress act responsibly.
Give me the game plan. So you and Ken Blackwell have put together this organization, brand new organization. Sole purpose is to pass a balanced budget amendment. Give me the next step in the process. What is it you're going to accomplish?
Well, thankfully, Speaker Boehner has helped us in the next step, and that is to make sure that there is a vote in the House and a vote in the Senate. Now, the next step is to organize, and there really are, maybe 8 to 10 swing states in this country. We know that we have probably 28, 29, 30 states where the senators will vote for it and the legislatures will vote for it. Colorado is one of those swing states. Ohio is another swing state. Same swing states that we have for the presidential election tend to be the swing states for an issue like this. So the strategy is to organize in those swing states, organize from the grassroots up, put pressure on the state legislatures, put pressure on the U.S. senators, and try to make it happen.
Do people understand this? We've got about a minute left. Tell me, is this an issue that people get instinctively? We understand abortion and gun rights. We even get taxes to a certain extent. Is this an issue that actually is the right time? Do people get this?
I would argue that people get this better than they get taxes. I don't get taxes yet, but someday I will. I think people get this issue, and the reason they get it is they understand what a balanced budget is. They balance their budget. The states balance their budget. They see balanced budgets around them. I think people in a 75 to 80%, if you poll, say yes, we want a balanced budget amendment. Now the details, the devil's advocate or the devil is in the details in this situation, and that's what's going to be interesting.
It's going to be fun. Ken, thank you so much. All right, so it's PassTheBBA.com. PassTheBBA.com. Stay tuned. You're going to love this next one.